And now, our favorite passage to quote to other people so they can put it into practice. Today, we continue our study on the Sermon on the Mount, where we're learning from Jesus how to live in the kingdom of God. And we find ourselves in Matthew 7, verses 1 through 5. Let's read that together. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not judge. Easier said than done, right? Try to make it through this entire clip to see if you don't judge the person driving the truck. Hard to do, right? Like, it was difficult to watch that video and not think, this is probably a metaphor for that guy's entire life. You know, I think a lot of people use this passage to say we can't make any kind of declaration about anything. Like, it could be 0 degrees out and someone's about to go outside and you could say, hey, might be a good idea to put on a jacket. They'd be like, hey, don't judge me, or something like that. That's not the kind of judging that Jesus is describing here or getting at. So what is Jesus getting at in this passage? Listen, we're all cooped up inside over the next several weeks, so we might as well learn some Greek. The Greek word that's translated into judge in this passage is krino. Or, if you want to hear that in a ridiculously thick southern accent, listen to this.
Strong's G 2919, krino. Krino.
BlueLetterBible.org. You gotta love it. It's actually an awesome study tool if you don't use it. I highly recommend it. So, anyways, what does krino mean? Well, it has a range of meanings, like many words, right? It can mean to judge in the sense of you're discerning something. Like, I opened up the milk carton and smelt it, and I discerned it was spoiled. I krinoed that it was spoiled and no longer safe to consume. Krino can also mean like a legal judgment or ruling, as in, the judge ruled that the defendant was guilty. That's a krino. He's judging there. But it can also mean judgmental in the sense that we're used to, and that you jump to conclusions about someone without knowing the full story or giving the benefit of the doubt. And when you look at the context of this passage, I think that's the meaning that Jesus is intending. Quick aside, by the way, we ought to be discerning. We ought to be discerning about righteousness and unrighteousness. Especially during these times, we need to be discerning about what's wise and safe. Like if you're hearing one thing from a news pundit about COVID-19, right? And then you're hearing another thing from a medical expert who works with the CDC or the World Health Organization, use discernment and go with what the CDC or World Health Organization, the medical expert, is saying. Now, imagine, though, living out the Sermon on the Mount up to this point, doing everything that Jesus is teaching in chapters 5 and 6. Let's say you are dealing with all the anger and conflict in your life. You're dealing with the lust in your life. You're living with integrity. You are turning the other cheek. You're loving your enemies. You're doing all these things for God alone. You're storing up treasures in heaven. You're being generous. And you're seeking first the kingdom and his righteousness. I mean, that would be an awesome disciple. I would love for all of those things to describe me. But if they did all describe me, I can imagine myself being pretty tempted to be judgmental as well. Like, oh, well, I'm doing what Jesus taught. Why aren't you doing what Jesus taught? Why can't they do what Jesus taught? And I can get judgmental. Here, is a log. Here is a twig. The Greek word used for a speck of sawdust in the English translation we read, that Greek word literally means twig. Now, what's the Greek word being used there? I'm glad you asked.
Strong's G 2595, Codifus. Codifus.
See, it never gets old. You know, Jesus is using an outrageous illustration to drive a point home. Others might have things they need to change. They have the twig. They got the speck of sawdust in their eye. And notice, right, that he's saying we can't ever address those things. We need to first, though, we need to address the plank, the log in our own eyes. Which of these is bigger? Clearly this one. So this is the bigger problem. This is the thing we need to address first and foremost. You know, I think we can get so caught up in what everyone else should correct about themselves that we don't reflect on what needs to change in our own lives. In his classic work, The Imitation of Christ, which I would highly recommend, Thomas à Kempis has some words that are especially applicable to this passage. He writes, "Try to bear patiently with the defects and infirmities of others, whatever they may be, because you also have many a fault which others must endure. If you cannot make yourself what you would wish to be, how can you bend others to your will? We want them to be perfect, yet we don't correct our own faults. We wish them to be severely corrected, yet we will not correct ourselves. Their great liberty displeases us, yet we would not be denied what we ask. We would have them bound by laws, yet we will allow ourselves to be restrained in nothing. Hence, it is clear how seldom we think of others as we do ourselves." Here's the order. Log first, twig second. You know, on Sunday's video, I encourage you to use this extra time over the next, at least few weeks. It could be longer. We'll see how everything develops. But to use this extra time to spend more time with God. And one way you can do that is to prayerfully reflect on your life. Like, what logs might be in your eye that you need to take out? And when you talk with other disciples, because we need to be reaching out to each other and staying connected since we can't meet up face to face nearly as much or like we are used to, I think this is something that you can discuss with each other. Hey, what things in your own character do you want to address or are you going after changing? Like, share those things with each other. Have that be a point of conversation this week with another disciple where you go, I really want to go after this in my life. Or maybe it's something you've already been going after. So it's, hey, I've been trying to make these changes. Here's where I feel I've grown, but here's where I feel I still need to grow. And you can pray for each other about those things that you share. And as you share with one another, let's be gracious. Let's be merciful, right? And patient, because the way you judge others, you will be judged. And the measure you use for others will be measured to you. And I don't know about you, but I want as much grace and mercy and patience as I can get from God when I'm judged. So, anyways, guys, stay safe. Be discerning with your health and the risks you expose yourself to over these next few weeks. But let's reflect on what logs might need to be removed. This could be a great time to come to identify, articulate those things, and get a plan together. And once you've done that, then we can help other people with the twigs. Guys, may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with you all.